Support for Anderson Cooper 360 comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully, so you can be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/AC360.
Are you a fan of technology news? Then the TechMeme Ride Home is a must-subscribe. For 15 years, TechMeme.com has been the website Silicon Valley checks every day for the latest news. And now, every day at 5 p.m., there's a 15-minute podcast that breaks down the latest news in tech, the coolest gadgets, the latest apps, the biggest funding raises, the most recent social media scandals. The TechMeme Ride Home is like NPR's Marketplace, but for tech news. A daily, easy-to-understand summation of the latest in the world of technology. Open up your podcast app right now and search Ride Home. Then subscribe and listen to the TechMeme Ride Home podcast. Again, search your podcast app for Ride Home and subscribe to the TechMeme Ride Home.
Good evening. A top administration official says we are a country of compassion. We're a country of heart. And as she said it, children were being held behind chain-link fencing apart from their parents on the border with Mexico. As she spoke of compassion, people of all political stripes were reacting to scenes like this one, a toddler watching her mother being searched by a border agent and later being torn from her mom. In the last 6 weeks, upwards of 2,000 children have experienced this trauma in what DHS Secretary Nielsen today called a country of compassion and heart. So we begin tonight, keeping them honest, with how the Trump administration can reconcile that claim with images like these and sounds like these. Those are children crying, waiting for the parents they've just been taken from. The audio obtained by ProPublica. We don't know what facility it was recorded in. This is not separation anxiety. This is real separation, real trauma. In just a moment, we'll be joined by a pediatrician. Her organization has written several letters now to DHS calling for this to stop. It stems from a decision by the president to enforce long-standing immigration law in a way that neither his Democratic nor Republican predecessors did, in part because it could lead to this. It was, as we reported and as members of the administration openly stated when they were actually selling this policy, a deliberate choice. Yet now, when faced with the consequences of it and the bipartisan uproar against it, the response from President Trump on down has been to deny responsibility and shift the blame.
And I say it's very strongly the Democrats' fault. They're they're really obstructionist, and they are obstructing. We're stuck with these horrible laws. They're horrible laws. What's happening is so sad, and it can be taken care of quickly, beautifully, and we'll have safety. This could really be something very special. It could be something maybe even for the world to watch.
Something very special. Well, the world is definitely watching, and they are reacting. Former First Lady Laura Bush in the Washington Post said, I quote, "I live in a border state. I appreciate the need to enforce and protect our international boundaries, but this zero-tolerance policy is cruel. It is immoral, and it breaks my heart." She continues, "These images are eerily reminiscent of the Japanese-American internment camps of World War II, now considered to have been one of the most shameful episodes in U.S. history." That's former First Lady Laura Bush. Former First Lady Michelle Obama weighing in as well, citing Laura Bush and tweeting, "Sometimes truth transcends party." Former First Lady Rosalynn Carter said, quote, "The practice and policy today of removing children from their parents' care at our border with Mexico is disgraceful and a shame to our country." Democratic and Republican lawmakers have weighed in, condemning what's being done, including Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz late today.
All of us who are seeing these images of children being pulled away from moms and dads in tears, we're horrified. This has to stop. Kids need their moms and dads.
Well, the president has said he hates this, that he hates what's happening, yet he and his top officials refuse to take responsibility for the policy decision that they, in fact, made happen. In fact, late today, the DHS secretary would not even concede the existence of a policy. Listen.
This administration did not create a policy of separating families at the border.
So, keeping him honest, Secretary Nielsen seems to be splitting hairs. No, the administration did not literally create a policy to specifically tear children from their parents. It created a zero-tolerance policy that resulted in children being torn from their parents. What's more, they were okay with that, in fact, touting it as a deterrent to child smuggling. Listen to Chief of Staff John Kelly, then DHS Secretary, when asked about it back in March of last year.
If you get some young kids who are coming in, managed to sneak into the United States with their parents, our Department of Homeland Security personnel going to separate the children from their moms and dads.
We have tremendous experience in dealing with unaccompanied minors. We turn them over to HHS, and they do a very, very good job of either putting them in kind of foster care or linking them up with parents or family members in the United States. Yes, I am considering, in order to deter more movement along this terribly dangerous network, I am considering exactly that.
So, in order to deter people from bringing their kids. So what the administration decided was to try each and every unauthorized border crosser in criminal court under existing law, which hasn't been done before. And because parents charged with crimes can't be detained alongside their kids, families would have to be split up. So again, keeping them honest, this was a policy decision, and the intention, at least in part, was to send a message, to act, as you just heard Kelly say, as a deterrent. Yet when asked today about something General Kelly was on record saying way back in March of 2017, Secretary Nielsen seemed to be, or at least acted, offended.
Are you intending for this to play out as it is playing out? Are you intending for parents to be separated from their children? Are you intending to send a message?
I find that offensive.
So what was a talking point in March is now offensive to even ask about. And a White House policy, that's not a policy. It's Democrats refusing to change a law that contains nothing actually mandating the breakup of families. Here's how Senator Ben Sasse, a conservative Republican, put it. Quote, the administration's decision to separate families is a new discretionary choice. Anyone saying that their hands are tied or that the only conceivable way to fix the problem of catch and release is to rip families apart is flat wrong. A discretionary choice, he said. Yet the administration will neither own it nor admit that what we're seeing at detention centers is even happening at all.
How is this not child abuse?
Be more specific, please. Enforcing the law?
The images that Cecilia was talking about and the sounds that we've seen from these big box stores, the Walmarts, the other stores, when you see this, how is this not specifically child abuse for these innocent children who are indeed being separated from their parents? Are there any examples of child abuse, you believe? And how could this not be child abuse for the people who are taken from their parents? Not the ones who are sent here with their parents' blessing with a smuggler, the people who are taken from their parents.
Unfortunately, I'm not in any position to deal with, hearsay stories.
Hearsay stories. More now from a White House under fire from nearly all corners on this. CNN's Jeff Zeleny, who just asked that last question, joins us now. So you tried to press Secretary Nielsen on the up to 2,000 kids who were taken from their parents, as you said, not ones who were brought here or sent by their families with smugglers. What else did she say about it?
Anderson, that's about all she said about it right there. She said, I can't react to hearsay stories. She said, if any specific examples come to us, we'll look into it. But the whole idea that the secretary would not acknowledge today is indeed the idea that of the images and the sounds that has transfixed the country on this. She would not acknowledge that this is indeed playing out. And she quickly tried to change the subject. When I was asking just a simple question about child abuse, she said she simply couldn't answer that, and then changed the subject to the fact that there are all the children brought over here smuggled sort of with the blessing of their parents. But on the specific case, she said she has visited those detention centers and they're treated well. But on the specific examples of the images that we've seen in McAllen, Texas, and other sites across the border, she simply didn't have an answer. And there was a sense as she stood in the briefing room, Anderson, that all of these answers came without much humanity or emotion. You heard Senator Ted Cruz there, Republican of Texas. He's on the ballot in Texas. He was saying it's heart-wrenching to see these images. That is one thing we did not hear today from the White House. Any sense of the fact, never mind the policy, that these images and the sheer fact of this is heart-wrenching. The message was Congress needs to fix it. It's the Democrats' fault. She came out here and towed the line, Anderson.
The White House kept pushing the briefing later and later today. What more have you learned about why that occurred?
We did. The White House briefing was supposed to be at 1:15. It ended up happening about 4 hours later, around 5:15 or so. The reality is Secretary Nielsen is running sort of the front of the house on this. She's taking the lead on this. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders did not, we're told, want to address these questions all by herself because they wanted someone with more gravitas, if you will, someone with more specific information on all of the specifics of what's happening at the border. So Secretary Nielsen was in New Orleans giving a speech earlier today, again saying the administration is not backing down. She flew back here to Washington, arrived around 1:30 or so, had a series of briefings throughout the afternoon, and then finally the White House was ready to have this briefing. But Anderson, it was an example of the fact that this communications system here was in breakdown. The White House was a lot of anger in this building. They're hearing Republicans, Democrats, evangelicals, the former First Lady, Laura Bush, who never weighs in on things like this. So they were figuring out how to react to the criticism, so they left it to Secretary Nielsen at the very end of the day. But she certainly didn't clear up all the questions, Anderson. And the president, of course, going to Capitol Hill tomorrow, where many Republicans have questions of their own.
Anderson. Yeah, Jeff Zeleny. Jeff, thanks very much. There's new CNN polling on the policy showing widespread disapproval, 67% among all voters. However, among just Republicans, it's far different, with 58% saying they approve of the zero-tolerance policy. Spoke about this earlier with Congressman Will Hurd, a Republican of Texas. Congressman Hurd, Secretary Nielsen just said that this administration did not create a policy of separating families at the border. Why does this administration refuse to take responsibility for what is inarguably their policy? It's based from the zero-tolerance policy.
Yeah, it's a question to me as well, Anderson. It's something that if there is a Homeland hearing, that I'm looking forward to asking just that question, because it's very clear that it's within Department of Justice, it's within DHS's ability to not separate kids from their parents. And so acting as if this is something that Congress is preventing from happening is just incorrect. And it's something that this administration could change right away.
Secretary Nielsen also said that Congress alone can fix that. I mean, you said, obviously, this administration, the president could change their policy. I mean, this is by their discretion they're doing this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They also could be focusing more attention on working with El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras on addressing some of the root causes in those countries that is causing this migration. She talked in her press conference about the increase of folks that are coming to this country illegally. I think part of that is because of the violence that's happening in Central America. We've seen an increase in that. I think it's compatible. They need to be talking about why, when they made this decision of zero tolerance, what did they think was going to happen? Because we haven't seen a decrease in illegal immigration coming into our country. And what other alternatives did they look at before they accepted this policy? There's a whole lot of questions. I also don't know if DOJ, DHS, and HHS are talking to each other the way they should. I experienced that over the weekend when I went to see a facility in my district.
Well, I mean, what do you say to Secretary Nielsen or to the president who say, look, this is a deterrent, that this is going to deter people from making the dangerous journey with their children and trying to cross over illegally, and that in effect, while it's terrible to see, long term, this is actually going to be better for kids because it's going to essentially prevent parents from making that trip?
Taking a 4-year-old out of his or her mommy's arms is not going to prevent terrorists or drugs from coming in this country. If we've already seen a net increase in illegal immigration since last summer, it's not stopping illegal immigration. What we need to be doing is focus on those root causes. We need to increase the amount of immigration judges that are working so we can decrease the amount of time that we have people in detention. We need to make sure we have smart border policies. And then we need to make sure that we're doing doing this in a bipartisan way. I think that's the only way we solve this problem. And we also need to remember, and I've said this a bunch of times, Anderson, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, we do not use kids as a deterrence.
According to CNN's latest poll, 58% of Republicans support this change of policy toward immigrant families and undocumented people crossing over. What does that say to you about where your party is right now? Because obviously you are Republican, but your district is you have more border than anybody else.
Well, what I'm seeing on the ground is the exact opposite. I'm seeing on the ground people that are appalled by this, people that have been Republicans all their lives, independents as well. So I can't speak to any of the national polling, but I do know in the 23rd Congressional District of Texas, the supermajority of people believe this is something that shouldn't happen and shouldn't be continuing.
The president of the American Academy of Pediatrics earlier today described the separation of families as a form of child abuse. Do you agree with that? I mean, is this a form of child abuse?
So I'm not a doctor, but I've seen all the same reports that separating kids unnaturally from their parents have long-term effects on their development, on their growth, and that's something that we should not be doing.
Where do you think this ends? I mean, is there a scenario where the president picks up the phone and ends this policy as it's in his power to do, or will it come down to Congress to try to fix this?
Look, I hope the president comes to the realization that this is something that should end. I'm glad there's voices out there like Laura Bush and Anthony Scaramucci that are talking about how this policy should change. It's unfortunate that we have to even debate whether a law needs to be put in place to say that let's not use children as a deterrent and let's not separate kids from their mother and father.
Congressman Hurd, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
With a lot more to come on this, including we'll talk to a pediatrician on the kind of trauma that kids on the border are experiencing when separated from their parents. We'll have more on how that recording was taken. Also, later, the Russia story. These two failed to tell Congress about a certain encounter with a Russian during the campaign. What they're saying now when we continue.
Support for Anderson Cooper 360 comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/AC360. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
We played a portion of a recording at the top of the program. Now, according to ProPublica, who obtained it, it was recorded last week inside a U.S. Customs and Border Protection detention facility. We don't know which one. The person who made the recording asked not to be identified for fear of retaliation. That person gave it to Jennifer Harbury, a civil rights attorney who lives and practices along the border. The children you hear are as young as an estimated 4 years old, we're told. Toward the end of the clip, you'll also hear a Border Patrol agent making an offhand comment as the kids cry.
No quiero que le paren a mi papá, no quiero que lo deporten.
Bueno, aquí tenemos una orquesta.
Just want to repeat those the recordings from ProPublica. We don't know what facility it was recorded at. The images you saw there on the right, those images are a facility provided by Customs and Border Protection. Dr. Julie Linton is a pediatrician who's seen firsthand the consequences of the trauma that these kids can be experiencing. She chairs the Immigrant Health Special Interest Group at the American Academy of Pediatrics. Dr. Linton, can you just describe what the short-term or long-term effects of this kind of separation could be on children?
Absolutely. So what we know is that highly stressful experiences, like separation of children from their parents, can cause irreparable harm to children. In the short term, we might see things like changes in bodily function, so difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating, changes with toileting. We might see changes in their behavior, so we might see aggression or we might see anxiety, and we might also see changes in their memory or their ability to learn and to develop. In the long term, we know that highly stressful experiences place children at risk for things like diabetes and heart disease and depression.
It can have that kind of a long-term impact?
Absolutely. When you think about what the kind of stress that children are faced in being in centers like detention centers and the processing centers, which I've seen with my own eyes, that in itself is profoundly traumatizing to a child. And then when you take away the protective support of the parent, you place that child in one of the most stressful experiences that I can imagine, and you take away the ability to buffer that support with the love, comfort, and protection of a parent.
Earlier tonight, the Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen was asked whether or not this amounted to child abuse, and I just want to play part of what she said.
We have high standards. We give them meals. We give them education. We give them medical care. There's videos. There's TVs. I visited the detention centers myself.
I'm wondering what goes through your mind when you hear that.
As a pediatrician, I know that taking a child away from his or her loving parent threatens the health and well-being of that child. You can play a video in front of a child who is profoundly traumatized, and if all they want is mommy, they're not going to watch the video. When you take a child and you put them in a situation where they're faced with cage-like fencing, when they're faced in situations where they are so frightened, all they want is that love and that protection of a parent.
The president of your organization, Dr. Colleen Kraft, reported that when she visited one of these shelters, that the shelter workers couldn't touch or hold or pick up the children. They couldn't console them, which was the rule. I assume that's in order to prevent some sort of abuse. But I mean, to not be able to console a suffering child who's been away from their parent, that just seems kind of stunning.
I agree. It's profoundly stunning. And we are traumatizing these children in two ways. Through the trauma of detention, which is not a substitute for not separating parents from their children. And then the worst trauma imaginable, which is taking that child away from a parent. To not allow that child to have the comfort and the protection of anyone is child abuse.
Dr. Linton, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Anderson.
Well, we've heard tonight from the White House, from politicians, and from childhood trauma experts. Coming up, we're going to take you to the southern border and conversations with those families on the ground still desperate to come to the United States, never mind the dangers.
Been putting off buying new glasses? Zenni Optical offers a huge variety of high-quality, stylish frames and state-of-the-art optics, starting at just $6.95. We've got all the great frame styles you want in materials like titanium, carbon fiber, and high-luster acetate. Plus, Zenni offers prescription glasses and sunglasses. So at this great price, you can build your eyewear wardrobe. You can get 10% off your entire order with code 360. So visit Zenni, Zenni, today at zennioptical.com and use code 360.
Well, for President Trump, the issue of children belonging to undocumented immigrants being separated from their parents at the southern border came down to one thing, which is politics, pure and simple.
Immigration is the fault in all of the problems that we're having, because we cannot get them to sign legislation. We cannot get them even to the negotiating table. And I say it's very strongly the Democrats' fault. They're they're really obstructionist, and they are obstructing. The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee holding facility. Won't be.
Well, for those families on the ground desperate to enter the United States, politics is the last thing on their minds. 360's Gary Tuchman tonight is on the border. Gary?
Anderson, I'm standing in Nogales, Mexico. 20 feet behind me, behind this gate, is the state of Arizona and the United States. The people in this line right here have passports, have documentation. They can go in and out at will. But the people here are migrants who've traveled hundreds of miles. They're with their children. They're hoping to get an interview inside. And they're hoping if they get that interview, that their children aren't taken away.
In the border town of Nogales, Mexico, the other side of this gate is the United States. And right next to the gate, sitting on the ground, are migrant families, living and sleeping outside, hoping to be allowed to proceed just a few more feet into America. Amalia is from Guatemala. Her son Kevin is 7 and Uber is 3.
What do you want to do in the United States? ¿Qué deseas hacer en Estados Unidos?
The 29-year-old mother says, I want to go protect my children and have a better life for them. Amalia says she fears for her life in Guatemala because of gang violence. As other people with passports and documents pass through the gate, these migrant families wait and hope for what is known as a credible fear interview with U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They say only one person has been called in for an interview all day. Eloise is from southern Mexico and has 3 children with her. The 46-year-old says, I'm scared. My kids are all I have in my life. I live for them. I'm scared for them. But have the mothers here heard about the children who have been separated from their parents after crossing into the United States? Each mother we talked with said they heard nothing about it weeks ago when they left their towns. Miriam came from Guatemala with her 2-year-old son, Franco. The 23-year-old says, I am scared. I'm hearing rumors now they could take my child away. Amalia says, there have been people telling me they're going to take our kids away, but I'm not sure. So why are these women willing to take such a risk? Amalia says, because if I go back, they're going to kill me. So this is the better option. The U.S. government claims children will not be taken away from parents who turn themselves in at legal ports of entry. Many others, including the ACLU and immigrant advocacy groups, dispute that claim. But what definitely does not bode well for any of these women we talk with is the recent decision by the Trump administration to overturn asylum protection for domestic violence and gang violence victims. I asked the U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer on the other side of the gate this question.
And when do you start letting the migrants in for their interviews?
We need to make sure we have enough assets to do it. My supervisors are working. If you want, you can go and ask the supervisor.
Okay.
We did. The supervisor said they were not permitted to comment out of this office. The migrants here, who have been provided food, water, and diapers by volunteers, say they don't want to lose their place in line, so they're not leaving. Miriam says she will not allow anybody to take her toddler away. What's happening now will not deter her, she says. And if she gets sent back to Guatemala, I will come back, Miriam says. I want to be in the United States. I will come back again.
So they're trying to cross at a point of entry where they can apply for asylum. Obviously, a lot of the people who are caught illegally crossing are not crossing at ports of entry where they can't even apply. What happens after they apply?
Well, the problem, Anderson, is applying in the first place. We heard the HHS secretary say today, go to a legal port of entry. These people have. Yet today, not one person has been called inside this building for an interview. The 3 women you just saw in our story are all still here. Hello, Miriam. Miriam's over there in the purple. They're all still here. No one is going in today. And yesterday, one person went in. So they're doing it by the book, but no one's being called in for the interview. So for whatever reason, and this is the first step to applying for asylum, they're taking their time. They're not interviewing people. Anderson?
All right, Gary, we'll continue to follow. Thank you, Gary. The Trump administration, of course, continues to insist that Congress could fix all of this practically overnight. When we continue, has the situation become so politically radioactive, solutions will be difficult and not impossible to find.
The right sheets can take your sleep and your style to the next level. With Boll & Branch, the upgrade has never been more affordable. Every set is crafted from 100% organic cotton. They get softer and softer over time. That's why they have thousands of 5-star reviews, and even 3 U.S. presidents have Boll & Branch sheets. Try them for 30 nights, and if you don't love them, send them back for a full refund. Go to BowlandBranch.com today for $50 off your first set of sheets, plus free U.S. shipping with promo code CNN2. Spelled B-O-L-L and branch.com. That's BowlandBranch.com, promo code CNN2.
Some more breaking news tonight. The Washington Post is now reporting that President Trump is defiant in the face of the crisis at the border and determined to get Congress to fund his border wall, whatever it takes. Reading from the story, quote, at a meeting with Senator Richard C. Shelby and Senator Shelley Moore Capito at the White House on Monday, Trump re-upped his threat to shut down the government in September if he doesn't get money for the border wall, according to two people familiar with the meeting. The Post's Josh Dawsey is on the byline. He joins us now by phone. So Josh, just explain what you are reporting tonight, that the president is closely monitoring news coverage of what's happening at the border. What's he been telling people in his inner circle about what he's seeing?
Right, and thanks for having me on. What the president's been saying is that he is defiant in this fight. He thinks that he has been weak on immigration or has looked weak on immigration in recent months. He thinks giving in here could be problematic. And sorry for the fire truck, and he says that he has to do what he can to keep this fight going. This afternoon, he demanded billions for a border wall in the Oval Office meeting. The issue of the child separations barely came up. But some of his advisors predicted us over the weekend that he may change course if his videos and footage of children were all over television, if they were promulgated everywhere. So far, that's not occurred. And one thing that we found today is that a number of his aides have shown him more positive pictures of the children playing video games, exercising outside, not really the images you've seen on TV. And that's been one reason they've been able to convince him that some of the coverage is unfair and make him suspicious of it.
So is it clear to you the extent to which the president is being swayed by those other images? I know you're reporting, he's been shown some other ones.
Right. That's kind of where we are right now. The dichotomy is this. Inside the White House, you have a number of advisors, John Kelly, who has said this could be a deterrent. Stephen Miller, who has embraced this as a policy of the administration, has argued for it forcefully. The president, who so far has been willing to go for it, but has continued to falsely claim it's a policy of the Democrats. But we have to see whether happen is whether if a sustained coverage of it continues and the president hears from more and more Republican allies. You notice over the weekend, Anderson, a lot of evangelical leaders who are normally with him publicly broke on this. You've seen some senators today, Orrin Hatch said today to us that the president can fix it if he wants to. Susan Collins said that they thought it was amazing that Kirstjen Nielsen keeps saying it's the onus is on Congress. So a lot of the traditional flank that's with him is kind of crumbling a little bit, and whether that completely deteriorates on this issue, I think will be key to whether the White House moves at all.
All right. Josh Dawsey from the Washington Post just posting that story. Thanks very much. With us now is Bakari Sellers and Jason Miller. Jason, you heard Secretary Nielsen earlier saying that this is really up to Congress to deal with. This isn't some policy put in by this administration. But, this is clearly, wouldn't you admit, a result of the zero tolerance policy put in by this administration?
Well, certainly Congress does assume some of the blame here, and I think it's both Republicans and Democrats, I think, assume some of the blame. President Trump ran on these tough border policies during his campaign, and they've known ever since he won the election that this day was going to be coming. So the fact that this hasn't been dealt with.
But they actually only recently put in this zero tolerance policy, and you heard from the former Secretary of Homeland Security, who's now the Chief of Staff, who said, he was thinking about doing it as a deterrence. So for the administration to say it's not being done as a deterrence, that's clearly how they were selling it up until recently.
Well, and what I was saying is that I think there are two parts of this. And as a Trump supporter, I'm ticked off that yet again he's been let down here. Congress should have gone and fixed this catch and release loophole so they can go and address that. But I think also DHS, I think in a lot of ways dropped the ball with their implementation of this. They should have had the necessary judges and the necessary administrators down at the border to be able to be ready for this surge that was going to be coming. I think they also needed to make sure that they were doing a site-by-site scan of because they knew at a certain point the media and other people would be coming through and make sure all these different locations were up to snuff and taking a look at these and walk through the optics of everything. And so as a Trump supporter, when I see both Congress dropping the ball and I don't think the DHS has done everything that they needed to, then I think it's the right policy but the wrong implementation. And so now we're at this critical mass here.
Right, but so Bakari, Jason is saying that the policy itself is the right policy.
No, it's not. I don't know how anybody who's a father, I don't know how anybody who believes in what the Statue of Liberty reads, who believes in what the essence of America is, can say that this is the right policy. The White House has bumbled messages before, and we've seen it. I mean, they came out and they lied. They say that this is the law. You've had surrogates say this is the law. When you ask them what law are you talking about, no one can point to it. This is policy. This is policy implemented by one person, and it can be changed with one phone call. Here we are. We're praying that Donald Trump gets positive images of children. We're talking about kids. We're talking about human beings playing in cages, smiling, so that he may one day reverse course. That's what we're talking about here. It's a travesty. This is not who America is. I understand having a hardline approach on immigration, but this is exactly who Donald Trump is, and I'm disappointed that we weren't able to connect the dots. He talks about people being aliens. He talks about people being animals, and he treats them as such. The problem that we're having here now, the outcry, is that he's treating the least of these. He's treating kids like pure trash, and that's not who America is.
I got to take a break, but Jason, we'll have you respond, and we'll continue this discussion when we come back. Also, we'll get a reaction from we'll play the reaction from Senator John McCain, who's just tweeted on this. We'll redo that ahead.
Hey, it's Howard Beck, and I've got Marcus Thompson of The Athletic on Bleacher Report's The Full 48.
Kevin Durant was incredible. For 3 straight games, He was insanely good in all facets of the game. And in the end, he says, I can't do this without Steph. I guarantee you that matters more to Steph than the Finals MVP.
So check out The Full 48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
More breaking news. Senator John McCain has just weighed in on policy that the White House still insists is not even a policy. He tweets, and I quote, "The administration's current family separation policy is an affront to the decency of the American people and contrary to principles and values upon which our nation was founded. The administration has the power to rescind this policy. It should do so now." Back now with the panel, Bakari Sellers, who right before the break said the president was treating children like trash. Jason Miller, your take on that? Because again, I mean, I know you point to Congress and you say it's a failure of DHS to kind of have all their ducks in a row before they start this policy. But this is, I mean, do you agree that this is a policy that the administration itself could reverse? The president could just decide to do what prior administrations did, which is, I know he says is kicking the can down the road, but to not have the zero tolerance policy.
My understanding is that it does need a congressional fix to get this done. I think there might be folks on both sides of this legal argument, but it's also something, I mean, it's not like we have to sit around wondering who's going to come up with the legislation. I think Ted Cruz has something that gets a lot of the ways there right now that addresses a lot of this. That will keep families together as they're going through the process, obviously after they're arrested when they're trying to enter the country illegally. And I think through some of this, we're losing sight of the bigger picture here, that we are a country of laws, that unfortunately we can't allow just everybody in the entire world to just come in whenever they want. And we have to go and actually start enforcing some of these laws. Now, if we built the wall or if we start building the wall, I think obviously that will go and help. But I think what the Ted Cruz legislation will do is it'll keep families together as they go through the process and return them back to their country. But we can't have an open border. Otherwise, we're going to completely lose our sovereignty as a nation. And I mean, this is an actual real crisis down at the border. You look at the impact, not just to the families that are trying to come across and what happens to them, whether it be through the coyotes or the other things that we're seeing with the children. But you look at the impact of, obviously, with the gang members, you look at the drug traffickers and all the bad people that are coming through. I mean, this is a real crisis at our southern border. And I feel like we're being a little bit Pollyanna and playing pick and choose on which crises we want to talk about.
Well, we're talking about 2,000 children in detention in, wire mesh cages and chain link cages, essentially. I mean, that's that, I know you, I mean, well, obviously, yes, there are gang issues, but there are 2,000 kids and those are real.
Well, and that's why I said I think this could be dealt with very quickly. I think the president does want to have a humane solution to this. Obviously, you can't let everybody into the country that wants to come in, especially illegally. But Congress can move fact. I think the administration can move fact here, and we can deal with this. This isn't as difficult as some of the other challenges that we face. I mean, we can work together and get this done this week. Okay. There's no excuse.
Bakari, what the administration says is, well, people should come in at legal points of entry and apply for asylum. Gary Tuchman was just with a group and basically who, are waiting for days and hardly anyone is allowed to even apply for political asylum, at least at the crossing he was at the last day or two.
Well, of course. I mean, Donald Trump has basically closed his door. You can look at the policy that Jeff Sessions implemented just last week or the week before last, cutting off victims and women who are the victims of domestic abuse and rape and violent crimes from actually gaining asylum here in the United States of America. So you have a very hard-line approach. But I think that Jason and many people in the Trump administration are conflating the issue. We have a larger immigration discussion that needs to be had. But right now, Donald Trump is causing a humanitarian crisis. And falling back on this line that we are a nation of laws, yeah, true, but we're also a nation of immigrants. And I think that this administration fails to realize that and forgets it conveniently often. We have a problem that Donald Trump can fix tonight. Donald Trump can pick up the phone, rescind this policy, speak to his secretary at HHS and Homeland Security, and make sure that these children are not taken away, ripped away from their family. And look, we're supposed to be the beacon of light for the rest of the world to follow. And we have kids in the United States of America eating off the floor in cages, and we have Trump and Trump surrogates that want to excuse it. It's mind-boggling.
But Corey, you know though that what the supporters of this policy will say is, look, you can't just let everybody who wants to come to the United States into the United States, and if you allow these families with their children to come in, it's going to encourage more people to make a dangerous journey, and that this is in fact a deterrent, which long-term may be better for kids because it prevents people from trying to make that dangerous journey.
Well, I hate to integrate facts into that discussion because, yes, that is an argument that people make, but it's not even proving to be a deterrent. This policy doesn't even work. So while we're destroying our image, our global image, while we're actually ruining people's lives, young people's lives, children's lives, putting them in harm's way, creating a humanitarian crisis, we have a policy, Anderson, that doesn't even work. It's been proven to be flawed. So my point is,
Bakari, you think there was no crisis until now? You think the MS-13 and the drug traffickers and the human traffickers, you think none of that was happening until now?
With all due respect, Jason, these kids are not MS-13. These kids are not aliens. These kids are not animals. These are children, Jason. And so when you're talking about this issue, we have an MS-13 gang problem in the United States of America. That's one issue. But don't come here and try to put the audience in a pretzel, conflating that with the fact that we have kids there and the president of the United States, your former boss, calls this humanitarian crisis, and he can fix it.
Bakari, I get that you don't like a zero tolerance policy. We can't have a 100% tolerance policy. And that's where clearly the Democrats are, and that's why they're losing on this.
I got to get a break. Bakari Sellers, Jason Miller, thank you. I want to check in with Chris to see what's coming up on Cuomo Prime Time in just a few minutes. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how you doing, Anderson? Boy, that is the right debate to be having. What is going on? Who will make this stop? We know the president can. It's clear he doesn't want to. It seems he favors this. The polls suggest he's right. He's got Republicans moving the right way on this issue. Their problem is they have 2 out of every 3 people in the country against them. But tonight, he's got his great defender coming on the show, Cuomo Primetime. Kellyanne Conway will be here to make the case. We also have Senator Kamala Harris about what the Democrats will do. And we're going to have a debate of our own tonight, 2-on-1. Both chairs will be filled by people who say this is the right policy. Let's see how it stands up.
All right, about 7 minutes from now. Chris, thanks very much. Coming up next, Trump associate Roger Stone admits to a campaign meeting with a Russian that he did not admit to when asked under oath about meeting Russians. We'll explain ahead.
Hey, it's Alicia Malone. I am the host of the Filmstruck podcast, an audio playground for lovers of cinema, both past and present. On the newest episode, I sit down with Morgan Neville to talk about his new film, Won't You Be My Neighbor, about the beloved television personality, Mr. Rogers.
Love is a noun like struggle. That these are things you have to fight for, and he fought for kindness.
Take tissues to see this movie and subscribe to hear more wherever you get your podcasts. Bye!
2 of the president's supporters are now admitting to campaign contact with a Russian promising dirt on Hillary Clinton. Roger Stone attended the May 2016 meeting, while former Trump campaign communications official Michael Caputo helped arrange it. They both say they forgot to tell congressional investigators about it. This is not sitting well with Democrats, obviously. Here's what Mr. Caputo said about all this earlier tonight on CNN.
This was something that I didn't remember. In answer to a question where I should have responded to this, I said, not that I recall. This I do recall now when I was, I recalled it when I was preparing for my testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Mueller team on May 1st and 2nd in just last month.
Well, in a letter to Congress from Stone's lawyer, the Trump confidant says the Russian offered, quote, non-specific damaging Clinton information in exchange for $2 million from candidate Donald Trump. Stone says he declined that offer. Our chief political analyst, Gloria Borger, joins us with more. Gloria, what else do we know about this meeting?
Well, what we know is that Michael Caputo arranged a meeting with somebody called Henry Greenberg, who spoke with a thick Russian accent with Roger Stone. Roger Stone meets with him, according to Roger Stone, and the guy says, I've got this dirt on Hillary Clinton if you pay me $2 million for it. And we know from the text messages that were exchanged between Caputo and Stone that Stone kind of dismissed him. And, of course, this was first reported in the Washington Post over the weekend, with Stone saying, sorry, Donald Trump doesn't spend $2 million on anything.
Well, so, I mean, if nothing came of this, as Stone's lawyer is arguing from the lawyer's letter, I mean, it's another example of a person associated with the Trump campaign meeting with a Russian seeking damaging information on or offering damaging information on Hillary Clinton. Right.
By our count, there are 14 Trump associates who have met with Russians. And, the attorney is saying, and he had to send a letter amending the testimony, of course, but the attorney is saying, and these two men are saying, look, it turned out to be nothing. What we do know for a fact, Anderson, though, is that Russians were knocking on every door they could possibly knock on, and they didn't get a lot of resistance from a lot of folks in being willing to meet with them or collect dirt on Hillary Clinton. We know that from the Donald Trump Jr. meeting in Trump Tower, of course.
So this was only revealed after Mueller had the text messages and asked Michael Caputo about it. Is that correct?
Right. Well, Michael Caputo says that he first learned about it when his lawyer was reviewing his text messages, but he was asked about it in early May by Mueller. And, he had to talk about it at that point, which he did. And, they have amended their testimonies before Congress. But what they're clearly trying to do, Anderson, is get out in front of this story and say, look, it's the story that we forgot this stuff. We didn't perjure ourselves. We forgot it. But what they're saying is that this Greenberg man was actually a plant from the FBI, and that this was really a sting operation on them. So they're saying, wait a minute, you have to look at what the FBI is doing. Don't look at us. And, this person actually did have a history of working for the FBI for a bunch of years, but apparently it ended in 2013. They're saying, no, it didn't. He was used by the FBI to try and frame us, and that didn't work, obviously.
And the FBI, have they said anything about this?
No, they're not. They never tell you who their informants are, as you know. But it's clear that Mueller may know a little bit more about this than we do.
Gloria Borger, thanks very much.
Sure.
And that's all the time we have. Time to hand it over to Chris Cuomo. Cuomo Primetime starts right now. Chris?
Are you interested in learning how great companies grow? Then download the MarTech Podcast. The MarTech Podcast tells the stories of real-world marketers who use technology to generate growth and achieve business and career success.
From advertising to software as a service to data.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Ready to learn the secrets of technology-driven marketing? Then download the MarTech Podcast. Just search MarTech, MarTech, wherever you download your podcasts.
Hey, before you go, we wanted to let you know that we just launched the ability for anyone to advertise on CNN Podcasts. You're just a few clicks away from reaching millions of people in a way that you never have before. Advertise for a business, event, or kick off an awareness campaign for your brand. Start today at purewinning.com/CNN. Integrating podcasts into your marketing mix has never been easier. Go to purewinning.com/CNN to get started.